It is Tuesday, the 10th of October.
Yes, good morning from Jerusalem. No food, no water, no electricity, life for people in Gaza as Israel says dozens of its warplanes have attacked 200 Hamas targets overnight. Kidnapped from their homes, Sky News speaks to Israeli families who have lost loved ones as Hamas threatens to execute an Israeli captive and broadcast it live for every civilian house bombed without warning in Gaza.
We saw the jeeps and the motorcycles of Hamas pushing young children.
Festival of Fear, we speak to partygoers who only just escaped with their lives after Hamas fighters attacked a desert rave.
Also coming up on the programme, arrests in London too, and an Israeli flag burned during protests about the Israel-Hamas war. We are the builders, a promise from Sir Keir Starmer to fix Britain. We're live at Labour conference ahead of his big speech. What food are you addicted to? A warning over what we eat and why labelling could help us. Could a return to Birmingham be on the cards for Wayne Rooney's next management job?
So I say, I think I better leave right now before I fall any deeper. I think I better leave.
And we'll speak to the pop star Will Young about his campaign to end animal testing in the UK.
Before I fall any deeper, I think I better.
Morning, everybody. We'll be joined by the Foreign Secretary James Cleverly in just a few moments' time to get his take on the Israel-Hamas war. First, though, to Mark, standing by for us in Jerusalem again this morning. Hi, Mark.
Yeah, good morning, Kay. And we begin with that news from Gaza of Israeli airstrikes on multiple targets overnight. The Israel Defense Force says it's pinpointing Hamas locations and has retaken control, it says, of the border fence. The armed wing of Hamas has made a chilling threat about how they will retaliate if Palestinian civilians are killed by strikes in this conflict. And we're just hearing that 1,500 bodies of Hamas militants have been found in Israeli territory. That is according to Israeli military officials. So let's bring you the morning's key developments so far. And Israel says dozens of its warplanes have attacked 200 targets in Gaza overnight. It says belong to Hamas, as the armed wing of the terror group threatens to kill an Israeli hostage and broadcast it live for every airstrike on a civilian home without warning. Israel's defense minister has ordered a total blockade of Gaza, leaving them with no electricity, no food and no fuel, as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu warns this could last for years. The UK, US, France and Germany and also Italy have released a joint statement expressing steadfast and united support for the State of Israel and also unequivocal condemnation of Hamas. And Iran's presidential office released a video of Ibrahim Raisi congratulating Palestinian fighters on victory, though US Secretary of State Anthony Blinken says the US has no direct knowledge of Iran being behind the attack. Well, since Saturday, an unknown number of Israelis have been taken hostage by Hamas, leaving relatives fearing for their safety. Our international affairs editor Dominic Waghorn has spoken to one man who's scared for 3 generations of his family who have all been kidnapped. He told us he now wants to join the fight.
10 hours after the attack from Gaza began, Palestinians were still rampaging through a Jewish border community, pillaging, destroying and hunting Israelis. Behind one house, they find a terrified mother trying to protect her children.
The first time that I saw the picture, I couldn't believe, I couldn't couldn't comprehend what I saw, and then I looked at another pictures, and it was very clear. This is my cousin, Shiri, and the two little children. Kfir is 9 months old, and Ariel is 4 years old, being held by Hamas. There is blood on their blanket, there is blood on the kidnappers.
It wasn't just Yossi's cousin and her children. 3 generations of this family have been taken. Shiri and Yarden Bibas, their young sons Ariel and Kafir, and her father and mother, who has Parkinson's, kidnapped without her medication. Their relatives are beside themselves with worry.
My fears is that they separated them, that they killed them, that they are injured, that we won't see them again, that we won't even get any piece of information with them anymore. And we will stay in this blank forever.
What is it like to feel like this?
It's like a lion in a cage. I'm walking back and forth in my house, waiting for something to happen, waiting for somebody to call me, to say that they have any information from my family, waiting for somebody to call me from the IDF to say that they need my help and recruit me.
And you want to go and fight?
And I want to go and fight. I want to go to help my country. I want to do whatever I can. And I know that all my friends and all the people that I know will do the same thing.
The same footage shows other Israeli civilians on this kibbutz being abducted by Palestinians and forced back to Gaza. This is late afternoon. The attacks began in early morning. But apart from deserted tanks, there is still no sign of the Israeli army. Yossi and many others want answers about how that could happen.
We had defense on Gaza, we had walls on Gaza, we had the intelligence, we have the military, we have planes, we have helicopters, we have tanks, we have everything. And the IDF, for the first couple of hours, it's like we had no army. The IDF wasn't exist.
As many as 100 Israelis were seized and taken to Gaza that day, say their government. Nothing has been heard of them since. Dominic Waghorn, Sky News, Ashdod, southern Israel.
Privileged to have the Foreign Secretary with us this morning, watching that report with me from Dominic. Thoughts this morning? Good morning.
Kay, good morning. Well, look, you've seen their reports of what has been an unprecedented terror attack perpetrated by Hamas into southern Israel, targeting children, old people, civilians. What we know is large-scale, indiscriminate killings. We know many hundreds of Israelis were killed in that attack, thousands injured. And that is why the UK, along with a number of our close friends and allies around the world, have given our unequivocal condemnation of Hamas's actions and our support to Israel in their time of need.
What news on the Brits?
Well, one of the features of Israel is that there are a large number of Anglo-Israeli dual nationals, and a number of them will regard Israel as their permanent home. A number of them will be serving with the Israeli Defence Forces. We keep in close coordination with the Israeli government. I've spoken with the Foreign Minister and I've met the Israeli ambassador. We will, of course, maintain our duty to support British nationals in Israel. We are ensuring that we work with the air industry to keep flights in and out of Israel so people who want to leave are able to, and we'll coordinate closely with the Israeli government about those British Israeli dual nationals who are seeking to stay in Israel.
What about the protests on the streets of London last night, burning Israeli flag? A 70-year-old arrested, we're told, by the Metropolitan Police for racial slurs. Your thoughts on that? Well,
the Home Secretary has been absolutely firm on this. Whilst we completely respect the right for peaceful protest, Hamas is a proscribed terrorist organisation, and therefore it is an offence to fly their banners and to
but not the Palestinian flag, obviously.
Not the Palestinian flag, that's a very different issue, but the Hamas flag. And of course, what we want to see is all communities, including the Jewish communities in the UK, feel safe and secure. So intimidatory behaviour the actions which would cause that kind of distress completely inappropriate. And the Home Secretary has been really firm on this, as have the Prime Minister and the rest of the government.
Your colleague yesterday, who was out here, Communities Minister, said these people should stay at home. What would you say?
Well, there is no need, there is no necessity for people to come out. It causes distress. So there is no need for this. At home? So I would suggest that they do. There is no requirement for this. This is a difficult and delicate situation, and increasing fear. And these protests, be under no illusion, are causing a huge amount of distress for people in the Jewish community in the UK, who have often been at the receiving end of prejudice and threats of violence. There is no need for this at all, and I would encourage them just to pause. This is a delicate and difficult situation, and this isn't helping.
What about your opposite number, David Lammy, sharing a platform with the Palestinian ambassador, who basically said the Israelis had it coming?
Well, those comments, the idea that somehow the
would you share a platform with him?
No, I wouldn't. I've met with him, I speak with him. Maintaining diplomatic relations is important. But the point that I've made, and I've made this directly to representatives of the Palestinian Authority, and it's worth remembering, of course, the Palestinian Authority on the West Bank is a separate organisation to Hamas in Gaza. So it's important we recognise that. But I have said that that Palestinian voices, particularly those in leadership positions, should criticise the appalling behaviour, the atrocious actions that have been perpetrated by Hamas, these indiscriminate killings, these murders, these kidnaps, these terrorist actions, should be condemned by the leadership of the Palestinian Authority, because otherwise there will be this perception that all Palestinians support Hamas, and they don't, and that all Palestinians support this action, and I know that they don't.
And what support does the British government offer to the people of Gaza? I note both you and the Prime Minister have tweeted your support for Israel several times over the last 24 hours. Nothing about those that are suffering in Gaza.
Well, we are working with the international community, the countries in the region, to try and minimise the risk of escalation. We don't want this spreading. I have spoken with the Egyptian Foreign Minister, and of course the Rafah crossing, which is the land crossing from Gaza into Israel, is open, so there is the opportunity for people to leave Gaza into Egypt. We will continue talking with the Egyptian authorities about maintaining that crossing. I mean, ultimately, the point that we're seeing is that Israel have come under attack from Hamas. They do have a legitimate right to a proportionate response to try and secure their borders, to try and prevent further atrocities like this, and we support them in that action.
I understand that, but it's not quite answering my question. You could take this opportunity, I suppose, to offer public support to those people in Gaza that are basically under siege at the moment. No water, no electricity, no food.
I think that implicit in your question, there's this idea that somehow, if we say something about one country, we have to say something about their neighbour. Yes, I know that, absolutely. But the truth is that the reason we express such solidarity with the people of Israel is because terrorist terrorists took action to murder, to kidnap, and we're now seeing reports that they are threatening to publicly execute people that they have kidnapped. The idea that somehow there is an equivalence, there is a kind of a balancing act between the actions of the Israeli government in their self-defence and the actions of Hamas in their terrorist is completely inappropriate. I wouldn't want to do anything which would imply that to be the case. Of course, we want to see the minimisation of loss of life. And we know that Hamas hides itself. It embeds itself.
But what about the people in
within
Gaza
civilian
who have no food, no
communities.
electricity, no water? Do you have a word for them?
Well, of course, we want to make sure that we want to minimise the loss of human life, and the best way of doing that is for Israel to prevent Hamas from perpetrating terrorist activities like we've seen over the last few days.
OK. You spoke, I think, just last month about hopes of a two-state solution. The quote will be on the screen, and you said that you hope that that would happen in the fullness of time. That's not going to happen for a generation now, is it?
Well, the sad truth is that the actions that Hamas have taken have set back the Palestinian cause enormously. Hamas is no friend of the Palestinian people. And, you know, I was recently in the West Bank. I've spoken to Palestinian people. I do regularly. Hamas are no friend of the Palestinian people. The actions that they have taken have set back the Palestinian cause enormously. And I would urge the Palestinian people to reflect on that and to reject Hamas and its violence. So sadly, you are right that the actions have set back the prospect of a two-state solution.
Dead in the water?
I'm not going to be despondent. I'm not going to be fatalistic. It is still something worth working towards. And ultimately, what we want to see, and I know the Israelis want to see this as well, as do many of the Palestinians that I speak to. They want to see a peaceful resolution so that Israelis of whatever faith, Jewish, Christian, Muslim, are able to live in peace and security and prosperity with the Palestinian people as well.
Foreign Secretary, I must let you go. A busy day ahead for you. Thank you for taking the time to join us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mark's standing by for us in Jerusalem. I think he's got Alistair with him as well. Good morning, gentlemen. Thoughts?
Well, Kay, first of all, very clear that the UK stands full square behind Israel. Very interesting that he called on the Palestinian leadership to condemn what Hamas has done. Interesting, too, when you pushed him on the siege of Gaza, no outright condemnation of Israel. He did say that they wanted harm to be minimised, but, you know, there was no outright condemnation of that siege of Gaza, which is interesting. Alistair, I mean, what caught your ear?
Well, I mean, you summed it up very well, and he is in a tricky diplomatic position in so much they are very overtly supporting Israel, you know, quite predictably and understandably so after what happened over the weekend, which was a mass terrorist act. There's no other way to put it. Yeah. But I think, as you said about what is now going on in Gaza, and as we work through the days and the Israeli military response starts to take greater shape, and a word on that actually where we're going to go maybe in a minute, it will become a harder dynamic, because as we know from the past, when Israel wants and does take military action in Gaza, of course it does go after Hamas or Palestinian Islamic Jihad, but such is the fabric and density of Gaza, it is absolutely inevitable that civilians will be caught up in it. An IDF source told me this morning that what are his exact words? You know, it is not going to be clean. They know that. Yeah. 2 journalists were killed overnight, and that's when it becomes harder for the world often, I'm talking historically, to balance their support for Israel vis-a-vis what they do in Gaza and how it affects the civilians. And when you're factoring in as well a complete shutdown of any fuel, water, electricity, food going in there, it could get very, very nasty indeed.
I mean, many Israeli ministers are saying that they are looking at the eradication of Hamas and its leadership. I mean, but the truth is, the top Hamas leaders are not in Gaza anyway. No,
Ismail Haniyeh who's the political leader, is in Qatar, for example. Yeah. And so, no, they aren't here. That does not necessarily, so jumping ahead here, doesn't necessarily mean Israel's tentacles cannot spread, incidentally. But they are not here. And when you talk about getting rid of Hamas, in many respects, are an insurgency contained within Gaza. You know, we have seen repeatedly over the past, whether it is the Taliban in Afghanistan, whether it is Islamic State, whether it is Al-Qaeda, any military, whether it's as powerful as the Israelis, the Americans, the British, whatever, trying to wipe out an ideology in a group like that is virtually impossible.
Quick word on what we expect next.
So now that they have managed to regain control of the south, I think we are on the cusp of moving to the next phase of the Israeli military operation, and I think they are getting close to completing their preparedness for whatever that might be. They won't say, obviously, but read into that possible ground invasion of Gaza. And then the questions that follow on from that is, what does the ground invasion look like? How deep does it go into Gaza? And what is the peripheral reaction to it in Lebanon and the West Bank?
OK, Ali, for now, thanks very much indeed. And by the way, we'll be bringing you Israel-Hamas war. That's a special programme live from here in Jerusalem at 9 o'clock tonight, UK time, here on Sky News. And I'll bring that programme to you much more in the coming hours. But let's go back to Kay.
OK, for now, thank you. Mark there with Alistair, of course, returning to them a little bit later on in the programme here on Sky News. Meantime, let's take you to Liverpool. So Keir Starmer will take to the stage today. It's the party conference there, of course, as he outlines his plans to lead the party into the next election and, he hopes, onto the steps of Downing Street. In an attempt to rally members and voters, the Labour leader will pledge to make Britain safe again. Let's get more, should we? Mari is standing by for us. What's the mood like up there, Mari? Good morning.
Good morning, Kay. Well, interestingly, actually, I have found the Labour mood here is quite positive. It's quite excitable. There's a real buzz about the conference centre at the moment. And actually speaking to kind of shadow ministers off the record, behind the scenes, they are actually quite surprised, but also pleasantly very pleased at how this conference is going. So far, most people are towing the line when it comes to issues around that war in Israel. We haven't seen too many dissenting voices. I think there's a lot of relief amongst some of the Labour leadership. But as you say, Keir Starmer today going to be giving a huge speech on what his vision for Britain is. So the overall arching theme is growth for the economy, but also what he calls a decade of renewal, showing that he is trying to seek 2 terms in office to try and get Britain's future back, as he calls it. So he's got announcements in the papers overnight talking about more bobbies on the beat, community policing, zero tolerance approach to antisocial behaviour, and also cracking down on shoplifting that has been plaguing a lot of supermarkets, as well as plans for new towns and also devolution. Now, let's read you a quote from what we're expecting in his speech today. He says, "People are looking to us because they want our wounds to heal, and we are the healers. People are looking to us because these challenges require a modern state, and we are the modernisers. People are looking to us because they want us to build a new Britain, and we are the builders." Now, we're also expecting Keir Starmer to criticise Rishi Sunak's decision to scrap the northern leg of HS2 that came last week in Manchester. Although what's interesting is we do know the Labour Party say they will not reinstate HS2 because of the financial constraints on the public purse. But for now, the Labour Party are very much saying they are no longer the party of protest. That is dead and gone in the past, and they are not going back. So all eyes on Keir Starmer at 2 o'clock.
Lovely, Murray. Thank you. So that speech at 2 today, of course, here on Sky News. I'm heading up to Liverpool later on after the programme and hoping to chat to Sir Keir tomorrow morning here on Sky News. So stay tuned for more on that. Before that, though, some of today's other headlines for you now. A&E departments are experiencing a rise in people being admitted with sore throats, insomnia, coughs and earache. Research found a 77% rise in the number of patients citing sore throats as their main reason for attending. NHS providers said the number of admissions is piling pressure to an already stretched health service. US President Joe Biden has been interviewed as part of a special investigation into his handling of classified documents. A special counsel is examining the improper storage of confidential material by President Biden during his time as senator. Last year, classified documents were found in the garage of his Delaware home. Hollywood writers have voted overwhelmingly in favour of an agreement which ended their long-running strike action. The Writers Guild of America said 99% of members who cast ballots voted for a new contract, which includes guarantees from studios about the size of staff and the use of artificial intelligence. Unions representing actors and radio artists are still in negotiations. Retail sales have suffered due to the cost of living. That's according to the British Retail Consortium, which has published new figures showing sales increased just 2.7% in September. That's well below the yearly average of 4.2%. The organisation said sales of big-ticket items such as furniture and electricals suffered as consumers limited their spending. The former England star, that's Wayne Rooney, of course, could be set for a return to management, this time at Birmingham City. Rooney's representatives have already held talks with the Championship club, who sacked their head coach, John Eustace, yesterday. Rooney stepped down as manager of Washington-based side DC United over the weekend. Birmingham are co-owned by NFL legend Tom Brady. Rooney's thought to be the favourite for the top job. And the UK and Ireland's bid to host Euro 2028 is poised to receive a formal seal of approval today. The five-nation bid is now unopposed after Turkey withdrew last week to focus on its joint bid with Italy for Euro 2032. 10 stadia were included in the submission, 6 from England and 1 from each of the other nations. And there's more. A pioneering British scientist whose work could save millions has died from cancer at the age of 29. Dr. Kirsty Smitten was co-founder and chief exec of Metal-O-Bio, a company which has created new antibiotics. She featured on Forbes 30 Under 30 Europe list in 2020 for her work in helping combat antimicrobial resistance. I was brought my breakfast.
Doesn't it look appetising?
Well, I have to say those pork pies do. You need to keep an eye on them if you don't want me to eat them. I'm Northern after all. Sorry, I digress.
You're welcome to, but you might not want them after you hear what I've got to tell you.
Listening.
So,
Okay,
this is what's known as ultra-processed food,
right.
UPFs. We're talking about those today, the health risks they pose and what can be done about them. So, first of all, what are UPFs? It's things like crisps, biscuits, pies, mass-produced bread, things that are generally cheap and convenient. They have a long shelf life. They generally taste good, but therein lies the problem we're being told today by scientists who say these kind of foods are addictive and they should be labelled as such. So this group of international researchers say that UPFs, because of their high fat and carbohydrate content, can have the same effect on the brain in terms of dopamine levels as things like drugs, nicotine and alcohol, basically leading people to get hooked and display all the kind of red flag behaviours such as intense cravings, withdrawal symptoms when they don't get them. So they're saying that as many as 1 in 7 adults worldwide are addicted to these kind of foods, 1 in 8 children. And their suggestion is that to manage this risk, why don't we put a big label on the packaging calling them addictive, and that might help people to kind of manage their diet and ultimately improve global public health. I mean,
but if that bread wasn't on there, that would look really good to me.
Yeah, I mean,
not to you. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't like beige food, right?
Yeah, exactly. I love a bit of beige food, especially if chips are there as well.
Exactly, it's all that kind of stuff. It is very appealing, very appetising. It tastes good, but therein, as I say, lies the problem, because it's all about this high fat, high carbohydrate content. More research is needed, but they reckon that it's kind of problematic enough to warrant some kind of intervention.
How many pork pies did you buy?
6.
Excellent news. Excellent news.
I will be counting them.
A quick look at the weather.
Warm memories wherever you go.
To fly.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
As southern parts look mostly fine today, while the north will see yet more rain, quite cloudy there now with prolonged rain in the far north and a few spots elsewhere. The dry south has fairly widespread mist and fog. Donegal and the northern half of Scotland will turn wet this morning, while northern England and the south of Ireland can expect some showery outbreaks.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
May want to look away now with a warning of a bed bug infestation in the UK. We'll speak to an expert about what you can do to stop those creepy crawlies. Can Labour fix the NHS? We'll ask the chair of the British Medical Association. Plus, Rishi Sunak tells the UK's Jewish community he'll stop at nothing to keep them safe. We speak to the editor of the Jewish Chronicle.
5 of us have made it out of the car.
Welcome to Backstage, the film and TV podcast.
Hello again, everybody. You're watching The Breakfast Show here on Sky News. Just a few moments' time, heading back to Jerusalem for the very latest on the war there between Israel and Hamas. Mark standing by for us. Before that, though, let's bring you more on our top stories this morning. The Israeli Defense Forces attacked more than 200 Hamas targets in Gaza overnight, as residents are left with no food, no water, no electricity. Hamas has threatened to kill Israeli hostages if any more unannounced airstrikes hit civilian homes in Gaza. And up to Liverpool, Sir Keir Starmer preparing to lay out his vision for leading Britain as he addresses his party conference in Liverpool. Here in the UK, Rishi Sunak has attended a prayer service for Israel, saying he wanted to stand with the Jewish people as they mourn. Meanwhile, 3 people were arrested during Free Palestinian demonstrations, which have taken place in central London and also outside Downing Street. Becky is standing by for us.
Fresh graffiti in the Jewish heart of North London and a sense of old wounds now reopened. A suspected burglary at a kosher restaurant left an uneasy community concerned that this was motivated by anti-Semitism. As police stepped up their patrols, for many in this part of the city, the attack on Israel is personal, and there's fear that ordinary people will be targeted in their workplaces or at Jewish schools.
I heard this morning that a lady was taking her child to school, and as she was dropping the child off to school, a car went past shouting, Allah Akbar.
Michael has family in Israel. He's had bad news about 2 of his relatives.
One of them, they found his body. The other one, we don't know what happened to him. He's disappeared. We don't know, we have no idea what happened to him.
Religious leaders say across Europe, Jewish communities feel threatened.
A friend of mine in Barcelona contacted me saying, Rabbi, don't go out in the streets of London, be careful. And I think there is a sense we have to be careful, we have to be vigilant.
But at a large pro-Palestine demonstration outside the Israeli embassy, people wanted their voices to be heard.
That's why I came here, I raised my voice, stop the war, stop the war. We want peace, we want to live together, we don't want to kill each other. That's enough, enough, enough.
This is not about anti-Semitism. Standing up for the issue of Palestine is asking for justice, respect for international law and an end to occupation.
At its peak, 5,000 people joined the protest, setting off flares and fireworks. A group then made their way to Downing Street, where they set fire to an Israeli flag. In Liverpool, outside the Labour Party conference, there was an angry exchange.
Stop the murdering of innocent Israelis and Jews! Stop it! Why? Why? Stupid woman!
The Home Secretary has said there'll be zero tolerance for anti-Semitism, and the Prime Minister spoke at a service at a synagogue in Finchley.
When the Jewish people are under attack in their homeland, Jewish people everywhere can feel less safe. We've already seen vile words on our streets and attempts to stir up community tensions. I say, not here. Not in Britain. Not in our country. Not in this century.
As Parliament was lit up in the colours of the Israeli flag, in communities around the country, there's pain, tension and the fear of what will happen next. Becky Johnson, Sky News, Central London.
Let's bring in Jake Wallace-Simons, editor of the Jewish Chronicle. Hi, Jake. Good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Heard from the Foreign Secretary this hour saying that demonstrators, Palestinian demonstrators, should stay home. What would you say?
I would say that that's good advice. I mean, nobody is denying that the Palestinian supporters have a right to express their views and have a right to support the Palestinians as a reasonable cause. But I think we need to take stock of what has just happened these past few days. We have seen the acts of the most medieval barbarism meted out on Israeli men, women and children, all of whom are entirely innocent within Israel's internationally recognized boundaries and just going about their daily lives. These are acts of barbarism, the likes of which, unfortunately, are familiar to Jews from previous centuries, from the Holocaust and stretching further back all the way into medieval times. And the fact that people in Britain can react to those atrocities by going out onto the street and waving the Palestinian flag without any thought of the victims or of showing any solidarity with those innocent lives lost is really despicable.
I thought for the civilians in Gaza who are trapped there this morning with no food, no water, no electricity.
Listen, I spoke to a friend of mine in Gaza on the phone just yesterday. They're scared. There is a lot of support for Hamas in Gaza, don't get me wrong, but there is a significant number of ordinary Gazans who, as he put it, can't see the point in this, understatement of the century perhaps, but they just feel totally let down and betrayed by the surprise attack which has led to such retaliation all around them. It's a tragic situation, and Palestinian lives and Gazan lives are, of course, needless to say, equally as valuable as Israeli lives, but we need to recognize that this was an unprovoked act of mass carnage, barbarism, savagery, and terror. Proportionately, don't forget, Israel is a very small country. Its population is smaller than that of London. If you were to scale that up, proportionately, it would be equivalent to about 7,500 British deaths. That's the scale that we're talking about. It's proportionately bigger, more than double the size of 9/11. This is a national trauma. It's existential for Israel. And we must recognize that when mobs take to the streets of London, screaming Hamas slogans, flying Hamas flags, it causes a real sense of danger for Jews in Britain, who this morning are living with heightened security around their schools. My nephew, just yesterday, was shouted at in the street because he was visibly Jewish. Jewish school children are being told to take off their kibbutz, to take off their blazers, identifying them as going to Jewish schools when they go to and from schools. There's a heightened police presence. These are very dark times indeed, reminiscent to previous centuries.
And what advice is the paper offering to the Jewish community at the moment?
Well, we are blessed with having a good community security group called the Community Security Trust and support from the Home Secretary who visited that group yesterday. I met her myself and she pledged that this would not be a repeat of 2021 when the Gaza conflict there spilled out onto the streets of Britain and we saw convoys of thugs driving through Jewish areas with megaphones swearing they would rape Jewish mothers and daughters. She swore that would not happen again. She called that a failure. Funding has been increased since then, and her advice was for Jews to call the police and local security at the first sign of trouble. Look, you know, there's good advice for the Jewish community. Everybody understands the precautions that need to be taken, but it's outrageous that in Britain, democratic Britain, Jews need to live under this sort of everyday threat.
Jake, thanks for taking the time to join us on the programme this morning. Thank you. Mark standing by for us in Jerusalem again now. Hi, Mark. Just hearing that even Jewish school children are fearful of going to school, having to take off their blazers so as not to be identified as going to a Jewish school. Such is the level of fear this morning here in the UK.
Yeah, well, there's considerable fear here as well. Yesterday, a lot of sirens were going off and there were rockets leaving Gaza, but of course there's a very good defensive system here. I mean, overnight you had attack after attack after attack into Gaza where there is no defensive system. So on both sides, one has to say that this is just the most awful situation. And it is being reported that Kay, more than 260 bodies have been recovered from the site of that music festival, the Nova Festival, that one-day event which was being held in southern Israel and the target of the first attack by Hamas. Well, Sky's chief correspondent Stuart Ramsey has been to the site of the festival, and a warning, his report contains some images of those killed.
A line of tanks have taken up a position in front of the trees and farmlands where an outdoor party was attacked by Hamas fighters. It's the most deadly act of terror in Israel's history. The road towards the party's location is now a heavily militarized area. A short distance away in Gaza, smoke rises after the latest helicopter gunship attack. The helicopters circle the area continuously. Trucks and cars used by the terror group remain where they were stopped by the Israeli Defense Forces. The bodies of Hamas fighters who stormed the festival lay where they were killed, on the side of the road or in fields as they attempted to continue the fight.
Well, the party took place in fields and beyond this wood line. It's only, well, it's less than a kilometre away from here. The partygoers were attacked as they were trying to get out onto this road, and this is where some of them died, but these are also the Hamas fighters themselves. The bodies are still here. But it's an incredibly dangerous area. We're just talking to soldiers. They said there were rockets here only 20 minutes or so ago. This is effectively the front line. Gaza is really, really near. It's over there. But such is the state of this, if you like, well, actual war remains incredibly tense everywhere you go.
Hai and Noam survived the massacre. They've lost friends, killed or abducted. They're now glued to the television for news.
The second photo, when we got the first strike.
Incredibly, as the initial rocket smashed into the party, they took selfies and sent them to their friends. They thought it would pass, so they hunkered down. Then they ran for their car.
And when the shooting starts, directly I push the gas and I go to the field that was on the right to me. I press the 4x4 button and I start driving. And Noam and I was hearing the shootings in our heads, and they hit the car, and we saw the jeeps and the motorcycles of Hamas pushing young children that they was under effect of drugs and alcohol. No heroic situation. They just butchered them.
This dashcam footage shows the Hamas gunmen going from car to car, abducting some and killing others. Hai and Noam escaped across fields in his Jeep.
I realized that in the other road, the left road that was traffic, in the exit, the terrorists just come with the gun and shoot everybody in those cars. And I remember that I want to go in this road because I thought it's the way out.
As the killing intensified, the partygoers began to flee across the fields by foot.
Nobody realized that it's going to be this huge situation. Nobody realized that there is going to come terrorists and kill a lot of people, like innocent people, that they just want to be with their friend, be happy, go to the party.
The military build-up along the borderline with Gaza continues. There is no doubt here that the war is just starting and will be long and bloody. Every day, as more details of the many attacks emerge, Israel is left reeling and shocked. This country wants revenge. Stuart Ramsey, Sky News, Southern Israel.
Well, there we are, Kay. You get a real sense there of the shock, the profound shock in this country that such an appalling atrocity, such a terrible terrorist attack could occur here. I'll be back from Jerusalem with more at the top of the hour, but now back to Kay.
Mark, thank you. Still to come this hour, though, why cases of liver cancer are spiking across the UK. And
The press preview, a first look at the front pages as they arrive.
There's a feeling amongst some commentators that it's not the most respectful timing.
I think there's a word for it, fake news.
I mean, it's wah, wah, wah from Harriet. Delving deeper into the stories with different perspectives on tomorrow's headlines.
We really haven't seen the government getting round the table and negotiating. There are no easy answers to those questions.
The press preview delivering you tomorrow's news tonight on Sky News.
I'm Adam Parsons. I'm Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Brussels.
More flares going off, a volley of rocks. Cobbles have been pulled up out and are being used as missiles to hurl at these police.
We take you to the heart of stories that shape our world. We aim to be the best and most trusted place for news. We have now left Italy and entered France. Nobody's asked to check our identity. Made by people who dare to challenge.
Nice to see you again, Mr. Barnier. Why?
Meeting you. Fishing does have the potential to stymie an enormous economic deal. What strikes you when you come to this glacier is not just the way in which the environment is changing, but the speed at which those changes are happening.
It's devastating, actually.
Hello again, everybody. You're watching The Breakfast Show here on Sky News Tuesday morning. Sir Keir Starmer will use his leader's speech today at Labour Party conference in Liverpool to pledge for a decade of national renewal as he tries to appeal to voters in what is likely to be the last party conference before a general election. In it, he'll likely repeat his pledge to rejuvenate the NHS. So will Labour plan to fix the health service, and will it work? Joining us now from conference is Chair of the British Medical Association, Professor Philip Banfield. Hello, Professor. Good to see you. Thanks for joining us on the programme. What will Labour do differently that you will be happy about that this present government has not done?
Good morning, Kay. Importantly and crucially, Wes Streeting talked yesterday about the need to recognise that pay has been lost by workers in the public sector and particularly doctors. He's also acknowledged that in a pay dispute, one needs to talk about pay. And this is something that this Conservative government has consistently refused to do.
OK. I hear that Sir Keir is going to suggest, in fact, he's already done it, £1.5 billion plan to save the NHS. But looking at the latest figures, I don't know if these are absolutely up to the minute, but the NHS budget is £160.4 billion. So what difference will £1.5 billion make?
Well, you know, everything that is put into the health service helps. There are different ways of raising money for the health service. We have a population in this country that is getting sicker because of the austerity policies of a government over the last 13 years. So there are savings to be made as the population improves its health and as there is a direct link between the wealth of the population and its health. So there are different ways of raising money. There are different bits of the NHS that need help. So that £1+ billion was talking about eating into weekend waiting lists. There is a need to invest heavily in general practice, which is one of the most efficient and effective parts of the health service, the more we get through the backlog, the more pressure is relieved on primary care. And it will genuinely save money if we could settle the pay dispute, get people and doctors back into treating patients, get through the waiting list. So, it actually makes economic sense to resolve the disputes.
Vacancy is one of the main issues. What are you going to do about that?
Vacancies, well, we've got to stop driving people out of the health service. That's about valuing our staff. It doesn't seem right that a newly qualified doctor has £100,000 worth of debt, earns around £15 an hour, and is earning £11,000 less than people who are less qualified than them in the health service. So, we are not asking for a pay rise for these doctors. We're asking to restore their pay back to the value that it had in 2008. And the numbers seem big, not because it's a demand for pay, but for putting back what has been lost. So, for example, if you had a pie and you've lost 50% of it, you've got half a pie, and we're asking for the pie to be put back. Now, to put that value back, if I only give 50% of the pie back, I've only got 3/4 of a pie still. So, this is not doctors being greedy. This is about maths.
Indeed so. But do you think that a Labour government would change that? Because it does appear that the present government is saying, no, you're not getting what you're asking for, 35%.
Well, I mean, it's a complete fallacy that the doctors are demanding this in a whole year. There is a negotiation to be had about the timescales and the amounts and the mechanism for doing this. So, we have an independent pay review body that is anything but independent, and reform of that could be put in place. We've talked to Wes Streeting, who is quite upfront that this is something that would need to be phased in over a number of years. We saw during the previous Labour governments that effectively pay was restored across a period of time. What this current government lacks is acknowledgement that there has been lost value of pay, and it lacks a commitment to restoring that pay. That is what's blocking talks at the moment.
OK. Professor, we must leave it there. Look forward to speaking to you again soon. Thank you. Quick look at the weather for you.
Warm memories wherever you go. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Southern parts look mostly fine today, while the north will see yet more rain. Quite cloudy there now, with prolonged rain in the far north and a few spots elsewhere. The dry south has fairly widespread mist and fog. Donegal and the north half of Scotland will turn wet this morning.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Several famous landmarks have been lit up across the world in a show of solidarity with Israeli allies. This was the Houses of Parliament in London, lit up in the blue and white of the flag. Meanwhile, France, well, they use the Eiffel Tower, as they do, to show its solidarity with Israel, with the Star of David seen visibly in the middle. And the US also followed suit, standing by their Israeli allies by lighting up the White House as well. Very latest from Jerusalem in just a few moments' time here on Sky News. Do stay tuned our way. Morning, everybody. It is 8 o'clock. You are very welcome to join us on The Breakfast Show here on Sky News. Tuesday morning, a war that will change the Middle East. In the words of the Israeli president, we asked the Foreign Secretary for his view. We'll bring that to you shortly. Tuesday, 10th of October.
Yes, good morning from Jerusalem. No food, no water, no electricity, life for people in Gaza as Israel says dozens of its warplanes have attacked 200 Hamas targets overnight. We asked the Foreign Secretary if he stands behind the people of Gaza.
Israel have come under attack from Hamas. They do have a legitimate right to a proportionate response to try and secure their borders, to try and prevent further atrocities like this, and we support them in that act.
Kidnapped from their homes, Sky News speaks to Israeli families who have lost loved ones as Hamas threatens to execute an Israeli captive and broadcast it live for every civilian house bombed without warning in Gaza.
We saw the jeeps and the motorcycles of Hamas pushing young children.
Festival of Fear, we speak to partygoers who only just escaped with their lives after Hamas fighters attacked a desert rave.
Also coming up on the programme for you this morning, arrests in London and an Israeli flag burned during protests about the Israel-Hamas war. We are the builders, a promise from Sir Keir Starmer to fix Britain. We're live at Labour Party conference ahead of his big speech. And what food are you addicted to? And warning over what we eat and why labelling could help us. And a return to Birmingham be on the cards for Wayne Rooney's next management job.
So I say, think I better leave right now before I fall any deeper.
And we'll speak to the pop star Will Young about his campaign to end animal testing in the UK. Coming up, we're going to be joined by Labour's National Campaign Coordinator in just a few moments' time to get the party's take on the Israel-Hamas war. First, though, Mark standing by for us in Jerusalem this morning. Hi, Mark.
Yes, good morning. We begin with news from Gaza of Israeli airstrikes on multiple targets there overnight. The Israel Defense Force says it is pinpointing Hamas locations and has retaken control of that border fence that was breached by Hamas. The armed wing of Hamas has made a chilling threat about how they will retaliate if Palestinian civilians are killed by strikes in this conflict. We spoke to the Foreign Secretary about whether he stands behind the people of Gaza. You'll want to hear what he said. We'll bring you that shortly. A spokesperson for the IDF has claimed in the last hour that the bodies of 1,500 Hamas militants have been found on Israeli territory. Let's bring you the morning's key developments then. Israel says dozens of its warplanes have attacked 200 targets in Gaza overnight. It says belong to Hamas as the armed wing of that terror group threatens to kill an Israeli hostage and broadcast it live for every airstrike on a civilian home without warning. Israel's defense minister has ordered that total blockade of Gaza, leaving them with no electricity, no food and no fuel, as he put it, as Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu warns that it could last for years. The UK, US, France, Germany and Italy have released a joint statement expressing steadfast and united support for the State of Israel and unequivocal condemnation of Hamas. And Iran's presidential office released a video of Ibrahim Raisi congratulating Palestinian fighters on what he called victory, though US Secretary of State Anthony Blinken says the US has no direct knowledge of Iran being behind the attack. Well, as I was saying, in the last hour, we spoke to the Foreign Secretary, James Cleverly, about the Israel-Hamas war. We asked him if he stands behind the people of Gaza after public shows of support for Israeli citizens who's been killed in the conflict. Plus, he had a message for pro-Palestinian protesters here in, or rather in the UK. We also asked if he thinks the two-state solution is dead in the water. Here's what he said.
There's this idea that somehow, if we say something about one country, we have to say something about their neighbour. Yes, I know that absolutely, but the truth is that the reason we express such solidarity with the people of Israel is because terrorist terrorists took action to murder, to kidnap, and we're now seeing reports that they are threatening to publicly execute people that they have kidnapped. The idea that somehow there is an equivalence, there is a kind of a balancing act between the actions of the Israeli government in their self-defence and the actions of Hamas in their terrorist is completely inappropriate. I wouldn't want to do anything which would imply that to be the case. Sadly, you are right that the actions have set back the prospect of a two-state solution.
Dead in the water?
I'm not going to be despondent. I'm not going to be fatalistic. It is still something worth working towards. And ultimately, what we want to see, and I know the Israelis want to see this as well, as do many of the Palestinians that I speak to. They want to see a peaceful resolution. Well, there is no need, there is no necessity for people to come out. It causes distress. So there is no need for this. So I would suggest that they do. There is no requirement for this. This is a difficult and delicate situation, and increasing fear. And these protests, be under no illusion, are causing a huge amount of distress for people in the Jewish community.
Well, since Saturday, an unknown number of Israelis have been taken hostage by Hamas, leaving relatives fearing, of course, for their safety. Our international affairs editor, Dominic Waghorn, has spoken to one man who's scared for 3 generations of his family who have all been kidnapped. He told us he now wants to join the fight.
10 hours after the attack from Gaza began, Palestinians were still rampaging through a Jewish border community, pillaging, destroying and hunting Israelis. Behind one house, they find a terrified mother trying to protect her children.
The first time that I saw the picture, I couldn't believe, couldn't comprehend what I saw. And then I looked at another pictures, and it was very clear. This is my cousin, Shiri, and the 2 little children. Kfir is 9 months old, and Ariel is 4 years old. Being held by Hamas. There is blood on their blanket, there is blood on the kidnappers.
It wasn't just Yossi's cousin and her children. 3 generations of this family have been taken. Shiri and Yarden Bibas, their young sons Ariel and Kfir, and her father and mother, who has Parkinson's, kidnapped without her medication. Their relatives are beside themselves with worry.
My fears is that they separated them, that they killed them, that they are injured, that we won't see them again, that we won't even get any piece of information with them anymore, and we will stay in this blank forever.
What is it like to feel like this?
It's like a lion in a cage. I'm walking back and forth in my house, waiting for something to happen, waiting for somebody to call me, to say that they have any information from my family, waiting for somebody to call me from the IDF to say that they need my help and recruit me.
And you want to go and fight?
And I want to go and fight. I want to go to help my country. I want to do whatever I can. And I know that all my friends and all the people that I know will do the same thing.
The same footage shows other Israeli civilians on this kibbutz being abducted by Palestinians and forced back to Gaza. This is late afternoon. The attacks began in early morning. But apart from deserted tanks, there is still no sign of the Israeli army. Yossi and many others want answers about how that could happen.
We had defense on Gaza, we had walls on Gaza, we had the intelligence, we have the military, we have planes, we have helicopters, we have tanks, we have everything. And the IDF for the first couple of hours, it's like we had no army. The IDF wasn't exist.
As many as 100 Israelis were seized and taken to Gaza that day, say their government. Nothing has been heard of them since. Dominic Waghorn, Sky News, Ashdod, southern Israel.
Well, as we've been saying, in a sign of escalation, the armed wing of Hamas has threatened the safety of hostages, saying it will start executing an Israeli captive for every civilian house bombed without warning. This comes in complete contradiction to the official Hamas line. When I spoke to Hamas's head of political and international relations last night, he said hostages would be treated humanely.
We didn't kill any civilians. We didn't kill any civilians. This is a pure Palestinian resistance responding to a continuous aggression against Palestinians in Gaza, West Bank, and Jerusalem. But at the same time, we are welcoming any support to our resistance.
Well, Israel's Prime Minister has been talking about this and has warned that this war will change the Middle East.
Any place from which Hamas operates will turn into rubble. This is already happening today, and it will continue happening even more so. It was a terrible mistake to attack Israel. What we will do to our enemy in the next few days will echo for generations.
I'm joined now by our Middle East correspondent, Alistair Bunkle, and I suppose the key thing now, Alistair, is what happens next.
And I think we're on the cusp of that, for the reason that they have now secured, more or less, were the exact words they used this morning, they have now secured the south of the country, finally, after the best part of 72 hours fighting Hamas within Israel itself. As a side note, they can't be absolutely certain that they have found all the Hamas fighters that came in, but they think that if there are any remaining in Israel, they're a very small number, and they estimate they killed 1,500 Hamas fighters, which in and of itself is a large number. But when you bear in mind many Hamas fighters would have then gone back into Gaza with hostages or whatever, it goes to show you the scale of the attack on Saturday. But moving forward, now that they have secured the south, I think their focus will turn towards what next. The troops are massing. They won't say what next. You wouldn't expect them to, because they don't want to give away any element of surprise. But I think we're all expecting a possible land incursion into Gaza.
OK, Alistair, thank you very much indeed. And we'll be bringing you Israel-Hamas war. That's a special programme live from Jerusalem this evening at 9 o'clock UK time here on Sky News. I'll be back a little later, but for now, back to Kay in London.
Mark, thanks. Let's go straight up to Liverpool and bring in the Shadow Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, Pat McFadden. Hi, good to see you. Thanks for joining us on the programme. 7:30 tonight, Friends of Palestine reception at Labour Party conference. Will that still go ahead?
I believe it will. The Labour Party is very clear on what happened at the weekend. This was a terrible, unwarranted terror attack on the people of Israel. Israel has a right to defend itself, to respond, to retrieve the hostages that have been taken, and to use force to do so.
Will the Shadow Foreign Secretary sit with the Palestinian ambassador, appearing with him at an event, given that the Palestinian ambassador basically said the last couple of days that Israel had it coming?
I can only tell you about my conference diary, Kay, where I will be joining the Labour Friends of Israel tonight in a vigil at the conference. We stood in silence, in solidarity with the people of Israel yesterday at the conference, and our position on this is very, very clear. This was a completely unwarranted attack to which Israel has the right to respond, to defend itself, to retrieve its people, and to use force to do so. And by the way, Hamas will have known all of this before they launched this attack on Saturday.
Yeah. However, my question remains, I think it's a reasonable one. The Shadow Foreign Secretary sitting with the Palestinian ambassador to the United Kingdom, who says that basically Israel had it coming. Your party has gone to great lengths to try to mend the fractures, I should say, as far as the Israeli community is concerned. And then your shadow foreign secretary sits with a guy who says they had it coming.
Well, they did not have it coming. And that is not the view of the Labour Party. It's not the view of the shadow foreign secretary. It's not the view of Keir Starmer or of anyone in his shadow cabinet. And our position is quite clear. This was a completely unwarranted attack. Hundreds of innocent Israelis were either killed or taken hostage. Israel will now respond to this. They have to retrieve their people. And if Hamas were concerned about the effect on the Palestinian people, they would return every one of those hostages, and they would do it today.
Is it appropriate that the shadow foreign secretary sits with a man who said what he said?
The shadow foreign secretary has the same view of this as me.
It's not my question, with all due respect, Mr. McFadden, that's not my question. Should he sit with a man that has made these comments?
The shadow foreign secretary has the same view as me, which is that this was a completely unwarranted attack, that Israel has a right to respond, to defend itself, and to retrieve the hostages who've done no one any harm and have been taken into the Gaza Strip against their will. And that is what will unfold now as Israel responds to this completely unwarranted attack last weekend.
Why won't you answer my question?
Because David Lammy and I are of the same view of this, which is the view I've outlined 3 or 4 times. This was a completely unwarranted attack. Israel will respond to it.
Mr. McFadden. Just
and
answer my
Hamas
question.
knew that before they launched the attack.
What do you think?
I think what I've said to you 3 or 4 times, which is that we stand with the people of Israel. That's what we did yesterday. We stand with the innocent victims of this.
And if I'd asked you that question, then that would have been the answer. That's not the question I'm asking you, Mr. McFadden. This is an atrocious comment by the Palestinian ambassador to the UK, who has been on the programme many times. I have no personal animosity towards him at all. However, saying something like that, and then somebody who would like to be our next foreign secretary shares a platform with him, lots of my viewers watching this morning would think that that is totally unacceptable. You're not going to answer my question, so let me put it in a different way. If David Lammy does share a stage with the Palestinian ambassador to the UK, should he be disciplined?
No, David Lammy will set out the same view that I'm setting out to you. He doesn't speak for anyone other than the Labour Party. I speak for the Labour Party, and our view is very, very clear.
It's not.
You know, there are plenty of people who want a better life for the Palestinians. I understand that. We all want a better life for the Palestinians, but it will not be achieved by the kind of terrible, unwarranted attack that was launched on Saturday. In fact, Palestinian people will suffer as a result of the unwarranted attack that happened on Saturday. And all of this was known to Hamas before they launched that attack. And what they should do now is return every one of those hostages, and they should do so today.
Obviously. However, what isn't clear is the shadow foreign secretary, if he shares a stage with the Palestinian ambassador to the UK tonight, should he take the opportunity then to criticise him for the comments that he made, which basically were suggesting that bloodshed of Israelis, innocent Israelis, civilians in Israel, was a byproduct of trying to find a two-state solution, for want of a better way of putting it?
On any platform that the shadow foreign secretary is on, and you heard his speech, his good speech to the Labour Party conference yesterday, he will set out our position, which is that this was a completely unwarranted attack. Of course, the shadow foreign secretary will say that. That's his view. It's the view of Keir Starmer. It's the view of the Labour Party. We stand with Israel. They have a right to respond to this. In any public forum that the shadow foreign secretary is speaking in, he will make her position very clear.
You need to be careful for this not to overshadow the party conference, and I think that you guys need to get together and come up with a form of words that will clarify the situation. In the meantime, Keir Starmer speaking later on. Build a better Britain, what does that look like?
Well, he's setting out his speech today, this afternoon, and building is a big part of it because the dream of home ownership has become more and more distant for a generation of young people. So we're coming forward with proposals today for a new generation of new towns, which is about more than building houses, it's about building communities, because we don't just want houses, although we need them. We also need the GP surgeries, the primary schools, the transport infrastructure, the businesses, things that make a community. And it's not just housing, it's also the infrastructure that we need for the energy transition and many other things. We have got to generate the wealth in this country to pay for the public services that we want, to enable people to buy a home of their own, and make sure that that generation of wealth is felt in every part of the country. And that's going to be at the heart of the speech that Keir Starmer makes this afternoon.
OK, thanks so much indeed for joining us on the programme. Thank you. Mari's standing by for us. Hi, Mari, thoughts? Hey, Mari.
Sorry, I didn't hear you there, Kay. Can you say that
That's
again?
OK. I was asking you what your thoughts were.
Interesting. I think Labour are going to continue to come under pressure when it comes to David Lammy's appearance or potential appearance with the Palestinian ambassador today. The fact that they are not clearing up whether he will or will not stand on a platform with that ambassador, I think is creating, to an extent, a bit of a vacuum where speculation is kind of filling that vacuum. And interestingly, I don't know why the Labour Party wouldn't clear that up and just say, yes, he will, or no, he won't. So the speculation continues today. Now, Pat McFadden was trying to say Labour's stance when it comes to the events taking place in Israel and Gaza is very, very clear and very, very strong. They absolutely stand with the people of Israel and they absolutely condemn the attacks by Hamas. But also, the Labour Party are very, very keen to make sure that they are clear about their position when it comes to Israel, because they are still scarred by the history, the legacy of anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. Now, today, Keir Starmer's speech is all about rebuilding Britain, but also the question is, can he or has he been successful enough at rebuilding the Labour Party so that people believe him when he makes these comments about Israel and Jewish people?
OK, for now, thank you. Some of today's other headlines for you on the programme now. A&E departments are experiencing a rise in people being admitted with sore throats, insomnia, coughs and earache. Research found a 77% rise in the number of patients citing sore throats as their main reason for attending. NHS providers said the number of admissions is piling pressure to an already stretched health service. Cases of liver cancer are rising dramatically across the UK, particularly in areas which are more economically deprived. Research shows around 800 men and half as many women are diagnosed each year in the most deprived areas, double the cases of the least deprived regions. US President Joe Biden has been interviewed as part of a special investigation into his handling of classified documents. A special counsel is examining the improper storage of confidential material by President Biden during his time as senator. Last year, classified documents were found in the garage of his Delaware home. Hollywood writers voted overwhelmingly in favour of an agreement which ended their long-running strike action. The Writers Guild of America said 99% of members who cast ballots voted for a new contract, which includes guarantees from the studios about the size of staff and the use of artificial intelligence. Unions representing actors and radio artists are still in negotiations. Former England striker Wayne Rooney could be set for a return to management at Birmingham City. Rooney's representatives have already held talks with the Championship club, who sacked their head coach John Eustace yesterday. Rooney stepped down as manager of Washington-based side DC United over the weekend. Birmingham are co-owned by NFL legend Tom Brady. Rooney's thought to be the favourite for the job. A pioneering British scientist whose work could save millions has died from cancer at the age of 29. Dr. Kirsty Smitten was co-founder and chief exec of MetalloBio, which is a company which has created new antibiotics. She featured on Forbes 30 Under 30 Europe list in 2020 for her work in helping combat antimicrobial resistance. I was here. Why have you got that food in front of you?
Well, what do you make of it?
I like the look of it, to be honest. Yeah. There's
Hard to
pie.
resist
I mean,
even at
who
breakfast,
doesn't like a
right?
pork pie?
Exactly. And that's what I'm here to talk to you about, the
Okay.
addictive quality of this kind of food. So these kind of foods are called ultra-processed foods, UPFs for short. It's things like mass-produced bread, biscuits, crisps, pies, all that kind of stuff. Cheap and convenient, long shelf life, generally tastes good, but it can also, well, that's part of the problem, be addictive. Scientists this morning say that this kind of food is addictive and should be labelled as such to manage the impact on our health. So some new research from some international researchers say it can have the same kind of impact on our brain as things like alcohol and nicotine because of the high fat and carbohydrate content, and lead to things like intense cravings, withdrawal symptoms when we're not getting it. They estimate as many as 1 in 7 adults have hooked on this kind of food, 1 in 8 children. So they recommend that if this kind of food has the word addictive on the label, on the shelf, then it'll help people manage their diet and eat less of it and ultimately improve global public health. Do you think that'll work?
What flavour are those crisps?
Ready salted.
Oh, I like those. Thanks. Oh, yeah.
So maybe you want to have more?
Yeah.
Exactly.
But I have to read the weather.
See?
Yeah, I know.
Warm memories wherever you go. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
And the ridge cut as well are amazing. Southern parts look mostly fine today, while the north will see yet more rain. Quite cloudy there now, with prolonged rain in the far north and a few spots elsewhere. The dry south has fairly widespread mist and fog. Donegal and the north half of Scotland will turn wet this morning, while northern England and the south of Ireland can expect some showery outbreaks.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Stuck in my teeth as well now, it's great. Now, kangaroos might be a common sight for some living in Australia, but an encounter with an extra cautious marsupial in New South Wales left travellers bemused. After bouncing along the road in front of them, the responsible roo halted in front of a red light and waited for it to turn green before resuming his journey. According to scientists, marsupials do in fact see in colour, so he could see that the lights will eventually change. Obviously, he's taking the highway code very serious. There he goes. Off he goes again. Love that. Still to come on the programme for you before 9 o'clock. With a warning of a bed bug infestation in the UK, we'll speak to an expert about what you can do to stop the creepy crawlies. Ugh. Plus, what can we expect from the Sir Keir Starmer's big conference speech later on today? We'll ask 2 Labour MPs.
So I say, think I better leave right now before I fall any deeper.
We'll speak to the pop star Will Young about his campaign to end animal testing in the UK.
Show me how before I fall any deeper. I think I better leave right now.
There is an invasion taking place across Ukraine. How long this will go on, nobody knows.
You can hear substantial shelling and rocket fire. There are civilians at the end of that.
It's a big fight. We might even be on the front line.
How are you feeling?
Strong. We run looking for cover. We just can't believe we're alive.
We'll fight Russia in the forests, the fields and shores of this land.
This is an absolutely incredible scene. There are dozens of people like this.
5 of us have made it out of the car.
Welcome to Backstage, the film and TV podcast.
Hello again, everybody. You are watching The Breakfast Show here on Sky News. Tuesday morning top stories for you. The Israeli Defense Forces attacked more than 200 Hamas targets in Gaza overnight as residents are left with no food, no water, no electricity. Hamas has threatened to kill Israeli hostages if any more unannounced airstrikes hit civilian homes in Gaza. And in Liverpool, Sir Keir Starmer preparing to lay out his vision for leading Britain as he addresses his party conference. Latest from Jerusalem now, though. Mark's standing by for us. Hi, Mark.
Yeah, good morning, Kay. As you say, scores of airstrikes overnight, and we're really just awaiting now the next stage of Israel's military response to all this. And meanwhile, it is being reported that more than 260 bodies have been recovered from the site of that Nova festival, the one-day event which was being held in southern Israel and which was the target for the first attack by Hamas. Sky's chief correspondent Stuart Ramsey has been to the site of the festival, and a warning his report contains some images of those killed.
A line of tanks have taken up a position in front of the trees and farmlands where an outdoor party was attacked by Hamas fighters. It's the most deadly act of terror in Israel's history. The road towards the party's location is now a heavily militarized area. A short distance away in Gaza, smoke rises after the latest helicopter gunship attack. The helicopters circle the area continuously. Trucks and cars used by the terror group remain where they were stopped by the Israeli Defense Forces. The bodies of Hamas fighters who stormed the festival lay where they were killed, on the side of the road or in fields as they attempted to continue the fight.
Well, the party took place in fields and beyond this wood line. It's only, well, it's less than a kilometre away from here. The partygoers were attacked as they were trying to get out onto this road. And this is where some of them died, but these are also the Hamas fighters themselves. The bodies are still here. But it's an incredibly dangerous area. We're just talking to soldiers. They said there were rockets here only 20 minutes or so ago. This is effectively the front line. Gaza is really, really near. It's over there. But such is the state of this, if you like, well, actual war remains incredibly tense everywhere you go.
Hai and Noam survived the massacre. They've lost friends, killed or abducted. They're now glued to the television for news.
The second photo, when we got the first strike.
Incredibly, as the initial rocket smashed into the party, they took selfies and sent them to their friends. They thought it would pass, so they hunkered down. Then they ran for their car.
And when the shooting starts, directly I push the gas and I go to the field that was on the right of me. I press the 4x4 button and I start driving. And Noam and I was hearing the shootings in our heads, and they hit the car, and we saw the jeeps and the motorcycles of Hamas pushing young children that they was under effect of drugs and alcohol. No heroic situation. They just butchered them.
This dashcam footage shows the Hamas gunmen going from car to car, abducting some and killing others. Hai and Noam escaped across fields in his jeep.
I realized that in the other road, the left road that was traffic, in the exit, the terrorists just come with the gun and shoot everybody in those cars. And I remember that I want to go in this road because I thought it's the way out.
As the killing intensified, the partygoers began to flee across the fields by foot.
Nobody realized that it's going to be this huge situation. Nobody realized that there is going to come terrorists and kill a lot of people, like innocent people that they just want to be with a friend, be happy, go to the party.
The military build-up along the borderline with Gaza continues. There is no doubt here that the war is just starting and will be long and bloody. Every day, as more details of the many attacks emerge, Israel is left reeling and shocked. This country wants revenge. Stuart Ramsey, Sky News, Southern Israel.
Well, I'm joined here in Jerusalem by our Middle East correspondent, Alistair Bunkle. And Alistair, I'm just reading that the Israeli military have been speaking and saying that Hamas has nowhere to hide in Gaza. We will reach them everywhere. A hint perhaps at what is coming next.
Yeah, I mean, I should say we hear that sort of language quite often when you have an escalation in tensions and a conflict with Gaza. We know that this time round it is different. That is determined language, it's ominous language, and we're all expecting a ground invasion probably to be the next phase or part of the next phase of this war. Whatever the Israelis say, it's not easy. I mean, look back a few months when there was a conflict against Palestinian Islamic Jihad in Gaza, the smaller militant group there. They took out a lot of senior commanders very quickly. Now, had they taken out major Hamas figures already, we would know about it. They would tell us about it, they would broadcast that, and they haven't done so. Hamas do have places to hide, whether it's in amongst the civilian population, whether it's in networks of tunnels. Trying to reach and sort of decapitate the head of the militant group, if you like, is an almighty task.
Could it be a special forces operation rather than a sort of full ground invasion, or is that equally difficult?
If you want my guess, and it's nothing more than a guess, I think you could see Israeli forces pushing in en masse, to a limited area within Gaza, holding it as some sort of buffer zone, and then using special forces to project outwards on particular operations. But that's a guess.
Okay. Ali, thank you very much indeed. More from Jerusalem a little later. Let's go back to Kay.
Thank you. Returning to Liverpool Labour Party conference, joining us now to discuss that a little bit further, Labour MP Stella Creasy and also Bel Ribeiro Addy. Hello to you both. Thanks very much indeed for joining us on the programme this morning. Actually, I want to talk to you about all sorts of things, not least what's happening in Israel, but also the leader's speech. Before that, where are we with the Foreign Secretary, the Shadow Foreign Secretary at the moment, sharing a stage with a man who has said Israel had it coming? Let's start with you, Stella.
I'm not aware of the incident that you're talking about. I know that the Labour Party is absolutely united in condemning the violence, horrified by what we have seen, desperately concerned about those still missing in Israel and Gaza, and also determined that the leadership of both Israel and Palestine need to come together and show restraint, but also look at what we can finally do to resolve the issues. But I haven't any indication other than that the Labour Party is absolutely united in its condemnation of this horrific violence that we're seeing. I mean, your previous report said it all, really.
Given that, Bel, should the Shadow Foreign Secretary be sharing a stage with a man who said, the Palestinian ambassador to the UK, who said that Israel had it coming?
As Stella said, I have no idea as to whether or not this is actually going to happen, and I'm not clear under the circumstances under which he would. But I think it's best you probably speak to David Lammy about that.
Keep trying. Let's see what happens as far as that is concerned. The leader will be speaking, Stella Creasy, a little bit later on today. What do you think he needs to say in order to be able to get the British public to vote for you guys come the next election?
Well, I think, look, everybody reckons this is a country on its knees. Every single day, my inbox is full of people who can't get a GP appointment, who are worried about the condition of our schools, who've just got too much month at the end of their money. They need hope. They need to know that there's a plan to rebuild this country. And also, I think they recognise that isn't going to be easy because austerity has just wrecked our public services in this country. So I think what you're going to see from Keir today is not just that rebuilding the country is a priority, but the start of a plan for how you can do that, and an honest reconciliation with the British public that it is going to take time to deal with the damage that the Tories have done whilst they've been in office.
And how do we know, Belle, that he's not going to continue to flip-flop? I mean, he has that reputation. When I was at Conservative Party conference last week, they were selling flip-flops with his face on them.
Oh, that sounds like something the Conservatives would do. They are absolutely ridiculous, a complete failure. After 13 years of running this country, their conference was all hand-wringing and talking about how awful things are. And I don't understand that, because they are the ones that have been in charge. With us being this close to an election, and with this potentially being the last conference before we have a general election, I think we're hoping and looking to expect some more detail on policy that's going to be forthcoming. And I also believe that we're going to hear a lot more about, I suppose, how difficult it's going to be coming out of the shadow of a Tory government, and I suppose what Labour are going to do more specifically to help people right across this country. We have to realise that if we don't win the next general election, people right across this country are going to continue to suffer.
Stella Creasy, I mean, he does have a reputation for being a bit of a flip-flopper, the boss, doesn't he?
Look, you can go to Tory party conference, Kay, and take them seriously, but the rest of the British public doesn't. They just see the damage that these guys have done. They see a Home Secretary trying to stoke division and hatred in our country, and they want something different. Now, we take your challenge. We take your challenge that our conference has to about setting out, not just that we're not the Conservatives, but that we are a serious alternative, but also that the public want truth. They want to know how you're going to do that, how you're going to make that happen. Now, it would be insane for Belle and I to preempt what the leader of our party is going to say, but I think you're going to be quietly surprised at the level of detail and the planning that's gone into how we can answer that question. And frankly, I think the British public deserve that. So you can have all the political insults you want. What people want to know is, are things actually going to get better?
Well, it's not just don't just take my word for it. People involved in Tony Blair's victory have speaking to The Guardian. They said Keir Starmer needs, excuse me, to set out clearer policy, and he's not doing that at the moment, Belle.
Well, I think that they're absolutely right. I'm not going to necessarily disagree with them on the need for clearer policy. We've heard people right across the country call for that, and people want to understand exactly how the Labour Party are going to get us out of this mess, and that's why I'm so hopeful that we're actually going to hear about this detail today. We've already had a few big policy announcements this conference. We expect the leader's speech to be more of that, and obviously as the months go on and as we lead up to a general election, a lot more detail. People have the right to know, and they're going to keep digging for it until they get their answers.
OK, ladies, we must leave it there. It's good to talk to both of you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Thank you. Still to come on the programme for you, an unknown number of Israelis have been taken hostage by Hamas. What happens next to them? Speaking to one of the world's most experienced hostage negotiator in just a few moments. And also chatting to an expert about what the Bank of England's unchanged base interest rate means for our mortgage payments.
Press preview, a first look at the front pages as they arrive.
There's a feeling amongst some commentators that it's not the most respectful timing.
I think there's a word for it, fake news.
I mean, it's wow, wow, wow from Harriet. Delving deeper into the stories with different perspectives on tomorrow's headlines.
We really haven't seen the government getting round the table and negotiating. There are no easy answers to those questions.
The press preview delivering you tomorrow's news tonight on Sky News.
I'm Adam Parsons. I'm Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Brussels. More flares going off, a volley of rocks, cobbles have been pulled up out and are being used as missiles to hurl at these police. We take you to the heart of stories that shape our world. We aim to be the best and most trusted place for news. We have now left Italy and entered France. Nobody's asked to check our identity. Made by people who dare to challenge. Nice to see you again, Mr. Barnier. Why? Meeting you. Fishing does have the potential to stymie an enormous economic deal. What strikes you when you come to this glacier is not just the way in which the environment is changing, but the speed at which those changes are happening.
It's devastating, actually.
Mortgages very much front and centre again, given what's been happening with the Metro Bank. Riz Malik, director of R3 Mortgages, is with us. Lots to talk about. Let's start with the Metro Bank, should we? If I've got a mortgage with the Metro Bank, or if I'm a saver, am I safe?
Sure. So if you've got a mortgage with Metro Bank, it's very much business as usual at the moment. Now, there are talks that they need to sell part of their loan book. It's nothing to worry about because they've done something similar back in 2020 and they sold it to NatWest. So it's business as usual. If they do sell part of their loan book and you are one of the customers that goes over to whomever acquires them, then they will be servicing your mortgage from there onwards. But usually your terms will stay exactly the same.
So does that mean that my mortgage would then be with NatWest rather than Metro? Or?
Correct. And then when your mortgage deal renews, in that case, it's normally whatever deals that NatWest or Santander or whoever buys the book are going to be able to offer at that time. So if you are a Metro Bank mortgage holder, it's not necessarily a bad thing because the people who acquire them might have cheaper cost of funds.
OK. And if I'm a saver?
If you're a saver, again, I don't think there is anything to be worried about. You're covered under the Financial Services Compensation Scheme with regards to...
As long as it's less than 85 grand.
Correct, yes. I think there will be a number of people who will be worried and concerned because what is the advantage of holding money with Metro that's going through this turbulent time versus another high street bank which has got a much better level of security? So I'd be watching the outflows from Metro Bank this week and going forward to see exactly what the situation is.
What would you do if you were a customer?
I am a Metro Bank customer.
Oh, there we are.
And to be quite honest, at the moment, I'm not of any concern. There's been a lot of people who are concerned who have safe custody with them. For example, safety deposit boxes, because they're one of the only high street banks that still operate in that area, and it's very lucrative business for them. So I personally wouldn't be concerned in terms of having any assets with them at the moment.
And what's your view more generally on mortgages?
So every time I come on here, Kay, unfortunately, it's been doom and gloom, especially for the last year.
Sure.
However, as of the last Bank of England base rate hold decision, it has been a lot more positive. The lenders are now really trying to compete not only on rate, but criteria as well. So they're trying to open the amount of business that they can do to try and get more business on the books. However, I don't think this is enough. I think the market is going to dwindle into 2024, and then if there are any changes, they might come next year.
That's the point, though, isn't it? It may have capped off for now, but it's how quickly it comes back down again.
Correct, yeah. And the rates, there's only a certain amount that lenders can do with the rates. And of late, it's not only the residential lenders, it's also the buy-to-let lenders that are trying to offer competitive pricing, which will be great news for tenants as well as people who hold residential mortgages. I think there is still a bit more to come, but the next Bank of England base rate decision is only a few weeks away, and there's a lot of economic data that can come out between now and then, Kay.
OK, and what about those that are thinking, I'm just going to put off buying a new house or whatever for now? And what sort of timescale are we talking about?
Personally, I think that the market may start moving in the early part of next year. There's an abundance of houses on the market. There's lots of buyers. I recently spoke to an estate agent and asked him how the market was, and his response was, what market? Confidence needs to return and stability with regards to pricing, and nothing's happening unless the Chancellor comes out with something amazing in November is going to stimulate this market, unfortunately.
So it's a buyer's market?
It's very, very much a buyer's market, and for those people who are out there and in position to move, they can actually negotiate some very big savings.
OK, and as far as the interest rates down to where they were previously, where basically we were paying 1%, 1.25% on our mortgages, when might we be back down there again?
Kay, if we go into a time machine or get a DeLorean, we might see those rates again. I don't think that's going to be any time soon. I was speaking to a client yesterday, the rate starting with a 1, I'm moving them onto a rate starting with a 5. Unfortunately, that is the reality, and we're still having those hard conversations, even though rates have come down.
OK, and what can people do? Because, I mean, I'm guessing their mortgages are doubling or whatever.
There are a lot of people whose mortgages are coming up to maturity at the end of this year and early next year. Sure. Some of those might have secured deals in June, July, August going into then. Pricing has come down, so if you have been one of the early birds, I would review the situation because you may be able to save some money.
And should you lock in on a fixed rate now?
Okay, a lot of people expect rates to come down in the future. However, it's down to individual circumstances as to whether that's the best thing. It depends if you could cope if rates did go up in the future.
OK, it's good to see you.
Pleasure.
Thanks very much indeed. Bear with me 1 second, if you would, please. Quick look at the weather.
Warm memories wherever you go. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Southern parts look mostly fine today, while the north will see yet more rain. Quite cloudy there now, with prolonged rain in the far north and a few spots elsewhere. The dry south has fairly widespread mist and fog. Donegal and the northern half of Scotland will turn wet this morning, while northern England and the south of Ireland can expect some showery outbreaks.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Still to come, we're going to be obviously going back to our colleagues in Israel, in Jerusalem, to bring you the very latest on the next steps there in this war between Israel and Hamas, and also talking about the granddaughter of an 85-year-old woman taken hostage by Hamas. She has pleaded for her safe return. There she is on the buggy. Yafa Adar is seen being paraded through Gaza on a golf cart surrounded by heavily armed fighters. The 85-year-old is among hundreds of Israeli civilians and soldiers being held captive by Hamas. She looks pretty determined, doesn't she? 85 years old. She's seen plenty. She's not going to be broken by what happened to her over the last couple of days. It's understood 3 people have been arrested in London over events following Hamas's unprecedented attack against Israel. Thousands of people attended pro-Palestinian rallies outside the Israeli embassy and Downing Street last night, where some could be seen burning Israeli flags. The Metropolitan Police say they will continue to have an enhanced, visible presence on the streets to reassure the public. And alongside the UK, the leaders of France, Germany and the US have pledged their support to Israel, with some even choosing to adorn their landmarks with the colours of the Israeli flag. That is the Palace of Westminster, of course. And then to the top left, you can see that that is the White House. And to the right, that is the Eiffel Tower with the, there you go, with the Star of David right at the bottom there. Still to come. As I said, we're going to be live in Jerusalem with all the very latest, and heading up to Liverpool as well for the latest on the Labour Party conference. That to come in just a moment. Do stay tuned, aren't we?